I don't remember deciding to start, but I do remember noticing when they began to change. At first, it was just the cups. There were 3 of us in the office kitchen every morning: me, Anton, and Liza. Same time, same quiet routine. The building wasn't large, just a small accounting firm tucked between a pharmacy and a travel agency. We didn't talk much. There was no reason to. Anton always used the blue mug with the chipped rim. Liza preferred a tall glass with a faint coffee stain that never fully washed out. I used whichever was clean. That's how it had always been, until one morning Anton reached for Liza's glass. He didn't hesitate, didn't notice, just poured his coffee into it and stood there, staring at nothing in particular. Liza came in a minute later, saw him holding her glass, paused, but didn't say anything. She took the blue mug instead. No one mentioned it. I remember thinking it was unusual, not wrong, just misplaced, like a word used slightly out of context. The next day, Anton used the blue mug again, and Liza went back to her glass, so I assumed it had been nothing. Our office was quiet in general. Numbers, spreadsheets, the hum of printers. We weren't close, but we understood each other in a practical way. Anton worked slowly, methodically. Liza was faster, but less precise. I checked both their reports before they went out. That part mattered. Consistency matters more than people think. Patterns are how things stay stable. Without them, small deviations start to accumulate. A week later, Anton came in early. That was unusual. He was always exactly on time, never early, never late. But that morning, when I entered, his coat was already on the rack. He was sitting at his desk, staring at his monitor. Not typing, not reading, just looking. "Morning," I said. He nodded. I sat down, turned on my computer, waited for it to load. After a moment, I noticed something. His screen wasn't on. It was black. He was staring at a reflection. I didn't ask. There's a point where questions become unnecessary. People reveal more when you don't interrupt them. That same day, during lunch, Liza forgot her password. She had used the same one for months. I knew that because I had helped her reset it once before, and she insisted on keeping it simple. But she sat there, typing slowly, frowning. "I think I changed it," she said. "When?" I asked. She shrugged. "I don't remember." She locked herself out after 3 attempts. I reset it for her. She thanked me, but her tone felt detached, like she was reading from a script she didn't fully believe. That was when I started paying closer attention, not because I was concerned, because I was curious. Patterns began to shift in small ways. Anton stopped bringing lunch. He used to eat the same thing every day, rice and chicken in a plastic container, but suddenly he just sat at his desk, hands folded, staring at his screen. Sometimes he didn't eat at all. Liza began arriving earlier, then later, then earlier again. No clear rhythm. Once she came in, sat down, opened her bag, and just left it open on the floor for the entire day. When I pointed it out, she looked at it like it didn't belong to her. "Oh," she said, and closed it. None of this was alarming on its own. That's the thing. Individually, each detail was small, but together they started to form something else, something less stable. I didn't change anything at first. I just observed. That's important. You have to understand a system before you adjust it. There was one moment, though, that stood out. Anton called me by the wrong name. Not once, 3 times. "Dmitri, can you check this?" My name isn't Dmitri. The first time I assumed it was a mistake. The second time I corrected him. The third time I didn't. He didn't react, just continued speaking as if the name matched perfectly.
I started writing things down after that. Not everything, just the inconsistencies. Dates, times, behaviors. Nothing dramatic, just deviations. Then I made a small change. It wasn't obvious. I didn't want it to be. I switched the mugs. Not in a noticeable way. I didn't hide them or rearrange the entire shelf. I just moved the blue mug slightly to the left, placed the glass where it wouldn't usually be. Enough to disrupt the automatic motion. The next morning, Anton hesitated just for a second. His hand hovered over the shelf. Then he picked the glass again. Liza came in, looked at the mugs, and froze. Not long, just enough. Then she took a random cup, one she had never used before. I didn't say anything. I made my coffee and sat down. That was when I realized something. They weren't correcting the pattern. They were adapting to the disruption, but not consciously. I made another change the next day. I adjusted the time on the wall clock, 3 minutes forward. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to create a subtle misalignment. Anton arrived on time, which meant he was actually 3 minutes late. He didn't notice, but Liza did. She looked at the clock, then at her phone, then back at the clock. She didn't say anything, but she checked her phone again 5 minutes later. By the end of the week, she had stopped checking. That's how it works. You introduce a small inconsistency. At first they resist, then they question, then they adapt, and eventually they accept. I didn't do anything drastic. There was no need. Subtle changes are more effective. I began adjusting things more frequently. Nothing large, just enough to create friction. I moved Anton's chair slightly closer to his desk. He pushed it back without thinking. The next day, I moved it again. This time, he didn't. I changed the order of files in the shared folder. Liza opened the wrong document 3 times before realizing. After that, she stopped relying on memory. She checked everything manually. I delayed sending one report. Just one. Anton noticed. He asked if something was wrong. I told him there was a system update. He nodded, didn't question it. The patterns dissolved slowly, like something eroding. They became quieter, more cautious, less certain. That was expected. The first real problem came 2 weeks later. Liza asked me a question, a simple one. Did we always sit like this? I looked at her. What do you mean? She gestured vaguely around a room. The desks, the layout. Yes, I said. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Anton overheard. He frowned. I think it was different before, he said. Neither of them sounded sure. That was the first time they compared notes. I hadn't planned for that. For a moment, I considered stopping, restoring things, letting the patterns restabilize. But that would have undone everything. So I made a decision. A quiet one. I introduced a larger change. I swapped their desks. Not entirely, just enough. I moved a few items, shifted monitors, replaced personal objects, things that made each space identifiable. The next morning, Anton sat at Liza's desk, without hesitation. Liza stood in the doorway, looking around. She didn't move for a while. Then she sat at Anton's desk. No one mentioned it. That was when I understood the full extent. They weren't just adapting. They were losing the reference points entirely. There was a moment later that day when everything almost broke. Anton handed me a report. "Can you check this?" he said. I took it. Looked at the name at the top. It was mine. I didn't react. "You already checked it," I said. He frowned. No, I didn't. I pointed to the document. That's your signature. He stared at it. Longer than necessary. Then he nodded. Right, he said. He walked away. Liza watched the entire exchange. She didn't say anything, but she didn't look away either. That was the closest point. The moment where something could have surfaced. But it didn't. The next day, Liza didn't come in. I didn't report it. I checked the records. She was on leave. I didn't remember approving that. I checked the records. There it was. My approval.